And so therefore, I would support the change.
Is the only entity that's impacted by this the hospital?
There are
Or
a
is it-
number of other lots in the area, but 99% of them are owned by the hospital. Yes.
What is the current FAR for the
0.2.
hospital? What?
0.2.
They're at the limit, so.
They're over the limit. They're over.
They're over, so why
Currently.
not change it to 0.25 or something like that?
It would have to be like 0.8. At some point, if you keep increasing, it loses its
Well,
effectiveness.
what's your concern? Only because we spent a lot of time with the hospital. I mean, they're pouring tens of millions of dollars, as we all know, that some of us who grew up in the area. Bayshore was not a place you went when you got sick.
I'm not saying it's a problem, I just want to understand
Yeah, no, I understand.
what it is, because that's not explained
Speak to the
here.
mic.
Yeah,
And then in the ordinance as it's on the counter here,
Can you use the mic, sir?
as the ordinance on the counter, there appears two places. One in A, where it gives coverage to 60%, that's unchanged. But in the chart on the next page, under 5 acres, it says 60-60. I suspect the second 60 belongs in the second column.
I would assume so. The only proposed change is to eliminate the FAR. The balance of the requirements in the zone have remained the same. Nothing else has been
We'll have
changed.
Jen look over again. If there's a typo, we'll correct the typo.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Anyone else care to comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and entertain a motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Montempo?
I'm on the board, I need to recuse myself this vote.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mayor Catelli?
Yes. Before we move on, there are 3 or 4 seats in the front row. If some of the gentlemen in the back would like to take a seat, you're welcome to come forward. Moving on, item 9, departments. How about our administrator? Anything to say?
No update, Mayor.
Jeanette, CFO?
No update tonight, Mayor.
Professional reports, item 10, our attorney.
Sure, Mayor. Got a couple of items. Good evening, everyone. The first item to update the committee and the public on is the litigation that has been going on for the past year plus between New Jersey Natural Gas and the Township of Holmdel relating to New Jersey Natural Gas's request to locate a regulator station along Holmdel Road. As many of you may be aware, they filed a second application before the Zoning Board of Adjustment which was adjudicated over the last couple of months and was denied by the Zoning Board. At the last meeting, for those of you who weren't present, the Township Committee went ahead and approved hiring Murray Bevan as special counsel to represent the Township in the BPU litigation against New Jersey Natural Gas. And I commend the committee for going ahead with that because New Jersey Natural Gas has gone ahead and hired the law firm of Wendell's Barks to represent them rather than their in-house counsel in the BPU litigation. And interestingly, Mr. Bevan represented the township in the successful litigation against JCP&L with respect to the power line project down the North Jersey coastline. And the attorneys who are representing New Jersey Natural Gas here are the same attorneys who represented JCP&L in that litigation. So they'll be having fun in court again, but I think the township is taking the steps necessary to represent the township position with respect to the 2 petitions that are now before the Board of Public Utilities, but we really can't speak any further on it because that is pending litigation. The second item, any questions on that, Mayor? I'm sorry.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, great. And the second item is another piece of litigation, which is between JAG Holding Company and the Township of Holmdel. This has been a matter that's been pending for...
JAG, for the benefit of everybody, is the old Remington.
There you go.
The polo club.
Yeah, and so that's been pending for...
17 years.
Exactly. A little less than that, but relatively speaking, it feels like that. There's a settlement agreement that's been negotiated by the special counsel handling the matter, which requires them to obtain a TCO to be basically serving some food by the end of June of 2019, or else forfeiture of the liquor license would be in play. So the recommendation after executive session discussion is to move ahead with approval of the settlement agreement, and I can read that resolution to the record after any committee discussion.
Any discussion on that? No, you good? So let's move.
Okay, so Mayor, I'd introduce, you can introduce a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Holmdel, County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, approving the terms and authorizing execution of the settlement agreement with JAG Holding Company.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Longcampo?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Festus?
Yes.
Mayor Patelli?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And for the record, Mayor, I will verify that if this is open by July 1, anyone that is at the meeting in that last week in June, I am buying that round. Yeah, anyone who comes to the meeting in June.
You're a man of your word, because you made a comment at our meeting at the senior center, and you didn't think it would happen. So we'll see.
Hasn't happened yet.
Anything from our engineers tonight?
No, Mayor, nothing specific.
Thank you. Item 10C, Attorney Planner. The next item on the agenda is a proposed settlement with Fair Share Housing Center, which involves affordable housing. As I explained at our October 9th, 2018 meeting, Township Committee meeting, I have been exercising a full recusal on issues relating to affordable housing. This includes my absence from participating in any discussions or actions regarding this next agenda item. So I now turn the meeting over to Deputy Mayor to preside as this topic is considered. The Deputy Mayor will also handle all questions regarding this topic during public comment. Thank you.
So tonight we have, ready?
Go ahead.
So tonight we have a resolution that's on the agenda for the affordable housing plan. Also in the audience, we have our co-attorney, Andy Bayer, and our township planner, Jen Beam, who are going to touch on review of any of the plan that is here in front of us this evening.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You have before you tonight an amended settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. And by way of background, in 2015, the New Jersey Supreme Court declared COA non-functional and ordered any town that was before COA, which included Holmdel Township, to file declaratory judgment actions in the Superior Court. Holmdel Township did that in July of 2015. And from July of 2015 through the present, because of the township's good faith participation in the process, it has enjoyed immunity from builder's remedy litigation from that filing through now. So that's been significant for the township, since that has allowed the township to engage in its own planning process and determine where and how the township would meet its constitutional obligation to provide for affordable housing. Last year, the township in 2017 reached an agreement with Fair Share Housing Center, which set the township's affordable housing obligation at 297 units. And the reason last year we had recommended that settlement and that number was because that represented an approximate 100-unit reduction from Fair Share Housing Center's expert, who had opined that the township's obligation was actually 397 units, or 396 units. So,
Andy, I don't want to interrupt you, but for the benefit of those that haven't heard this, or they might hear for the first time, just want to slow down for a second,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So the state, right, through the courts,
Yep.
gives us a mandate.
Yeah, through the New Jersey Constitution.
Correct. And if we were able to act appropriately within a certain time frame, in effect, our number could be lower versus what you said right there was a probable number. Is that a fair statement?
If we fully litigate the matter, yes, the number could have been slightly lower.
Okay, so we ran the risk of a higher number
Correct.
versus acting on what we have.
Right.
So I want to make sure that, again, this is not a choice for us. We were given a directive. This is
Correct.
the law.
It is.
Okay.
It's every
I
town.
want to make sure that everyone understands that, because sometimes, believe it or not, there's this thing called social media, and it actually gets things wrong. So I just want to make sure that we're getting it right.
Yes, it comes out of the New Jersey Constitution, Eric.
Thank you.
Yes. So, my point is that in settling at the 297 number, the township actually saved at least 500 total market rate units, 500 units, because to generate 100 affordable housing units with a 20% set aside, you need 500 total units. So the township had reached that agreement last year. The process, we then went to court to get the settlement approved, and there were...
Andy, I won't do this to you all night, but I apologize, but I just want to make sure, because I know when friends of mine have asked me questions, just to understand, we run through this quickly.
Yep.
A builder is not going to build a COA unit without getting 3 or 4 market rate units. The number, the ratio is 4. So just for the benefit of the public, if I had to build 10 COA units, that builder would generally want 50.
50.
So for every time that I can reduce my COA unit, I'm not reducing it by that number, I'm really reducing it by 5.
Correct.
I just, again,
So in order-
maybe the whole public understands this crystal clear, but I have a feeling that some people might not, so occasionally I just want to slow it
I
down.
think that's a good point,
Andy, I
committee.
have to interject too.
Everyone loves this topic.
Rocco might not understand it now.
Eric is a good businessman. But it is true that some people want more than the 4 units. And in our negotiations with other people, wasn't there a place that was 8-to-1 almost
Yes.
on Route 35? So
Correct.
the number is variable. Whatever the builder can get away with is what they're going to try to do.
And we have negotiated, and you'll see in this amended settlement agreement, we negotiated at one site a 31% set aside, where the normal for rentals is 15%. So we got the developer there to put double the number of affordable housing units for each market rate unit, because our goal, the committee's goal, or that instructed Jen and I when we were handling this matter, was to limit the total development and its impact on the township, and that's what we've been trying to do.
Okay, so again, I just want to give a little bit further insight. When you build a COA unit, you can rent that. You can rent that to a senior. You can sell that to a senior. And some of the suggestions have been, well, I'll build 50 COA units, and I'll give that all to seniors, because that way I have no children, and it will not have any impact on my school system, which is a concern, and a reasonable concern. Unfortunately, we have to present a plan that has to be accepted by the courts. So, if there's not enough family units, you will get rejected.
And the regulations require a minimum amount of family units as well.
Okay, just want to again make sure that's clear.
On a maximum, there's a 25% maximum on senior units only. So you can't satisfy your entire obligation with senior units, that's not permitted.
Correct. So, in any event, there was a number of objections filed before the court last year, and Judge O'Brien, who we've been before over the last year, along with the court master, Michael Boland, directed the township to try to negotiate a revised settlement agreement, which is what you have before you tonight. And I'm going to have Jennifer go through the details of the sites, but in terms of the global picture, the original settlement agreement in 2017 had 454 new housing units, and the revised agreement has 207 housing units. And Jen, the chart on the screen goes through each site, and Jen will do that. So there's been a significant number in terms of reduction of the total number of units. And again, I think the key and the main impetus to approve this agreement, which is the recommendation of both your planner and myself, is that this allows the township to control the zoning in within its borders. It allows you to decide where and how the obligation that the New Jersey Supreme Court and the legislature, through the adoption of the Fair Housing Act, has foisted upon Holmdel and all other towns, and it will allow you to maintain immunity from builder's remedy litigation through July 2025. And I keep using that phrase, builder's remedy litigation, but that's a lawsuit by if a community such as Holmdel didn't have immunity from builder's remedy lawsuits, a property owner or developer could sue you and ask the court to suspend your zoning regulations and say, I want to build high-density residential housing in a commercial zone, and if you haven't met that obligation, the township, the court could impose that builder's remedy and suspend your zoning regulations. So the advice that we have provided to Holmdel is you want to control and limit the amount of development that's here, and to do that, you should consider approving the settlement. The last point global point I want to make is that the number that we have reached in terms of the overall obligation at 297 is very favorable as compared to some other Monmouth County municipalities. For instance, Manalapan Township's number is in excess of 800 units. Howell Township's number is almost 900 units, and that's affordable housing units, not total units. Marlborough Township's obligation was over 2,000 units over this entire time period. So we think that in terms of this county, the overall impact, while significant, is significant, it's certainly far less than your surrounding communities in the county.
Andy, there's one other thing I want to make clear, because some of the other questions that were really out there today is they confuse, I think there's a lot of confusion between the words COLA and the words Section 8. Are any of these homes Section 8?
No.
Zero.
Zero.
You say that again, zero.
Zero.
So there is we actually have, and if anybody would like to see it, we have a guideline, an income guideline that will show that, for example, a four-person, so a two-family person in Monmouth County could make upwards of $90,000 and still qualify.
Yeah.
Correct.
So this is, this is not the perception that I think can get out there as far as, are we, changing the outlet of the town.
The main difference, Committeeman, between Section 8 and this sort of this affordable housing is that in Section 8 housing, the federal government actually, in essence, pays a landlord rent for a tenant who can't otherwise afford it. Here, whether it's an owner of affordable housing or a renter of affordable housing, well, in the case of ownership, has to qualify for a mortgage, from a bank, and has to pay the mortgage, obviously, and in terms of rent, they would have to have income qualifications in order to pay anywhere from $800 to $1,300 a month, as opposed to the federal government paying that tenant's rent. So it's a significant difference. It's quite often municipal workers who qualify, teachers, young professionals, young couples such as my children, who are just starting out. But in any event, yeah, so it is significantly different.
Sure. So, in looking at what we had included in our settlement in 2017, compared to what we have now, I just want to quickly run through like the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and it's up on the screen for everyone to follow along. We had a surplus in our second round plan from the late 90s of 4 units. So that does carry over. You don't lose the credits. You do get to carry them over. The township did enter into a program extending controls on existing affordable units that are located within the township. And this is not a pie in the sky, maybe we'll do this. This was done. Deeds were extended for 100 existing affordable housing units within the township. So that's not new roofs. Those are existing roofs that have been here and will remain. There's a group home located on Stillwell, which has 15 bedrooms, and as a result, the town gets credit for each bedroom within that group home as affordable housing. and there was an assisted living facility approved as part of the entire kind of plan development where the commons and there's a number of different uses over there currently, and that assisted living facility has 110 beds. 10% of them are Medicaid beds, and so the township receives credit per Medicaid bed. So we do get credits for that. And that's consistent in both the 2017 and the 2018 settlement agreements. What has changed is that in the 2017 agreement, there were 4 projects, one located on Mill Road, one located on Palmer Avenue, one located on Route 35 right behind the Coles, and then we had included, and there was a project at North Piers, which is behind the hospital, and then the Lucid redevelopment plan did require the developer, Ralph Zucker, as we all know, to provide either 34 units within the building, outside the building, or to pay the township money, but he is required to provide that by July of 2020. Correct. So we had included the 34 units because he entered into a redevelopment agreement with the township to provide those units. And at the time, it was anticipated that those units were going to be located inside the building.
At the time of the redevelopment.
Correct, at the time that the redevelopment agreement was signed.
You said there's some said it was inside or outside. I think the redevelopment agreement only allows them to put it inside the building.
No.
Well,
Off-site,
Offsite.
in the building, off-site.
Also with township approval, correct?
Correct, with township approval.
Okay.
Or to pay, and the township has the ultimate decision with respect to how that happens in 2020.
Yeah, it's not off-site on the Bellworks property,
No.
it's off-site someplace else in town. They can't build it behind the building.
With our approval now.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and then under that redevelopment agreement from 2013, the developer, Somerset Development, doesn't have to exercise that option of how it's going to satisfy the obligation, as Jen was pointing out, to July 2020. So that will be deferred to future affordable housing rounds once the developer exercises that option and reaches, and if necessary, reaches an agreement with the committee.
Well, just to clarify, so people here that are interested in this conversation and topic understand, he has the option for the redevelopment agreement to either build the 34 units, right?
In the
Or
building.
in the building, come to the town, if he has a site off-site the building for approval from the township committee.
Correct.
Or 3, pay us money based on the calculated numbers already embedded in the
Correct.
development agreement.
Correct. It amounts to approximately $150,000 per unit, and they owe us 34 units. So it's approximately $5 million.
$5 million, okay.
So, as Andy had indicated, we did go to court last year in December. Issues arose and the adjudication in front of the court was deferred, which enabled us as the township to go back and renegotiate the agreement that we had signed in the summer of 2017. And I think that you all have done a fantastic job, because what has transpired is, number one, the Route 35 site is no longer within the settlement agreement, which, as Committeeman Pascucci had indicated earlier, probably gave us the worst set aside of all the proposed projects that we were discussing. And then we went back to the developer on North Beer Street and renegotiated from a circumstance which was 150 total units, where they were giving us 30 affordable, to where we're getting 66 market rate, and we're getting 31 affordable units, to a total of 97. So we've cut that down by 53 units overall, plus there is area on site allocated for medical office, which is right across the street from the hospital, which seems to lend itself to the overall medical circumstance happening in that area of town. That equates to over 31% set aside. That's almost unheard of, to be perfectly honest. The traditional set asides are 15% for rental, 20% for sale. This is a rental project, so to get a 31 point something percent set aside for a rental project is more than twice what a traditional set aside would be, and that is a testament to the negotiations that took place over the course of the past year. In addition, Middle Road used to be a traditional inclusionary project with 50 total units, 10 affordable. Now it's going to be a 100% affordable municipally sponsored project, still 50 units, but instead of just getting 10 affordable units out of that development, the township is going to get 50 affordable units out of that development, reducing the overall number of roofs. And in addition, Palmer Avenue went from 50 to 60, so albeit a 10-unit increase, but they are giving us a 12-unit set aside, totaling 223 affordable units, and that does include those top 4 rows that we discussed earlier. The maximum bonus you can take is 20% of your overall obligation, which is 74. It doesn't really matter. I've allocated them here in the chart just for illustrative purposes. It doesn't really matter what project they're assigned to. We're entitled to 74 bonuses, whether they're, more for North Beers, less for Middle Road. It doesn't really matter. We're entitled to 74 bonus credits, which we're taking credit for, resulting in a total of 297 credits, which is the number that we were charged with hitting. Previously, we had 314, a 17-unit surplus, but in speaking with the powers that be, you folks, that at this point we want to minimize the overall impact and the number of new roofs that the township would experience over the next several years. And so hitting that number at 297 was kind of our goal, and that's where we hit. This new settlement in 2018 generates 247 less roofs than the previous settlement a little over a year ago. So it basically
Jen, how many children do you anticipate that would have?
Okay, well, we did calculate that using the numbers that are generated out of Rutgers. It's 93 total children. And a lot of that has to do with the number of bedrooms, most of which deal with the market rate units. The affordable units, the bedroom distribution is regulated under UPAC. There's regulatory where 20% of the overall units have to be 3-bedroom. A maximum of 20% can be 1-bedroom, and the balance can be 2 bedrooms. So that bedroom distribution is set by regulation. But the majority, so for example, Palmer Avenue, every unit in Palmer Avenue that's a market rate unit is a 2-bedroom unit. Generates less kids than a 3-bedroom unit. So generally, we would see 93 total school-age children, 18 out of Palmer Avenue, 38 out of Middle Road, and 37 out of North Beers, totaling 93. That's a projection, but it's based on real data that the Brain Trust at Rutgers has consistently evaluated and created these multipliers, which we've utilized here. So let's just say round up to about less than 100 kids, and that's K through 12. It's not in one particular grade area. So, but it's 247 less rooftops. If you added those 247 rooftops into the circumstance, you could easily double that number. So this is a far and away a better alternative than was presented a year ago, or a little over a year and a half ago.
So guys, any from the committee, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I would like to do, I have a question and then a statement if I can.
Okay.
I would like to make a real statement at the end after I hear from the public, but right now for the plan.
Louder, please.
Maybe you might, if you might.
To the gentleman in the back. I'm going to hold my final comments to the end. But for now, I would like a couple questions, and I'd like to hear from the public before I make my final comments. Jen, on Palmer Avenue, there's a lot of flooding down there. Has that been taken into account in the plan?
It has. So the developer of Palmer Avenue has secured all relevant DEP permits. They have their flood hazard permit, they have their wetlands permits, they have them all in hand. The flooding issue that occurs in that area of town is a regional issue. It's not a site-specific issue. And to develop that property, there are stormwater management regulations that require a reduction in runoff. So while I understand that it's difficult to envision while putting parking lot and building on that site, how that would improve the circumstance, they do have to handle their own drainage on site. So in addition, the developer has agreed to, on an annual basis, desilt and desnag the stream that is on their property, which will help the carrying capacity of the stream along that corridor. So do I think it's going to solve the regional drainage problem? No. Is it going to exacerbate it? No. So yes, they have looked into it, and they have proposed the development on the developable portion of the property consistent with their DEP approvals and have made those commitments to try to mitigate as much as possible the issues that the section of town experiences, yes.
Another, just a statement. I'd like to hear from the public. I see that the public's going to be discussing this after we vote, correct?
Right now, since this is not an ordinance, this is just a resolution, there's no public hearing before you vote, that's correct.
Not that I want to be busted, and I'm sure we will be, but I think we should hear from the public before. After we ask our questions, I think we should ask the public to speak, then we can take our vote. That's my opinion, so I'd like to make a motion.
All right, so I'll make the motion, I'll make that motion. I'll make the motion that we have a public comment limited to 3 minutes per person before we make a motion on this agreement.
That's fine.
There's plenty of people here that want to have questions, comments.
We need to vote on that, Mike, or just adopt it?
All in favor? All in favor?
Okay. So the format's going to be, because this is not typically how a resolution is handled for you guys that come to meetings, no. We don't have a hearing on the, only when it's on an ordinance and it's been already listed, introduced, and then advertised before we have the hearing. So this is a little different. This is the first time the public obviously is seeing the affordable housing plan. So I'll ask the rest of the township committee members if any other questions for the professionals. And then if people would like to come up and have any comments regarding the plan, we can certainly handle it. We'll limit to 3 minutes. And then we'll take the vote at the end after we close the public portion.
Just one quick question. Andrew, who's the current judge that you've been working with this whom?
It's Dennis O'Brien.
And that judge is expected to change next year?
It is. The Chief Justice moved Judge O'Brien to the criminal part. He's now handling criminal cases.
And the new judge coming in is?
Well, we are before Judge Perry, but Judge Perry is retiring. So the backup Mount Laurel judge right now is Judge Jones, Grosso Jones. So ultimately, we could end up before her, depending on time.
Okay.
Any other questions from the township committee or on to the professionals? Yeah, you good? Good. Okay. So we'll take any public on, this is just related right now to the affordable housing plan that was presented tonight by our attorney and our planner. Anybody like to come up and have any question or comment, please raise your hand and I'll call you up to the microphone. Yep, come on up, sir. Please state your name, address of the record, and then state your question, comment.
Good evening. Chris DeVito, 4 Deer Crest Court. My question, you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I've seen people in Middletown take advantage of the income requirements. Is there any way, does a town have any authority where you could look at their tax returns after a year, 2 years, 5 years, just to make sure? Because I've seen people make the income and then a year later they're making double and they're still there, and not only does make them, they don't qualify for that income anymore, and they're taking it away from somebody that probably does qualify.
It's sickening.
Yeah.
It's sickening.
I've seen it,
and
I just, is
listen,
there any way we could do
yeah,
something?
you can try to destroy any paraphernalia with the Communist Party. I'm sorry, but this is, listen, the government should not control housing. We all agree, everyone here believes that. There is no, and I repeat, no system to inspect. So if I'm an intern, a doctor, for 1 year making 28 grand, and for the rest I make, millions of dollars, there's no process. It's a disaster. You should write to every single state legislature that you have. This is not our fight, unfortunately, but it is awful, and you're absolutely right. It's abused up and down the state.
My understanding is the state is working on this, is that correct?
I understand, correct.
Yeah, right after they work on the gerrymandering.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Anybody else in the public? Yes, sir.
I don't have to give the oaths and all that.
No, just state your
Somebody Chanji at 38 Takalusa. So the number one, thank you. You all did a good job. It's dramatically less. I was surprised how much it had dropped by. So thank you. That's very good. my question is, for the 50 units on Middle Road, since they're all affordable housing units, how's the developer going to make money? Is the town going to put money in?
Can I have my attorney cover that?
Sure, I can answer that, sir.
Yeah.
So the way these projects are funded statewide is through a tax credit program through the New Jersey Housing Mortgage Finance Agency. It's a competitive program. The township will have to designate, go through a procurement process and designate a developer who would then apply for tax credit financing. And if the project meets the criteria, and we've been told that this project on Middle Road scores perfectly, so it'll be very competitive for what they call 9% tax credit financing, the developer will finance that through that program mostly.
So the township is not on the hook?
Well, the township, the answer is generally no. It depends on ultimately the deal. There is money available in an affordable housing trust fund, which is not taxpayer money, which is developer money, that has been used in other communities, but that's going to depend on what the state does with the financing.
But most likely, the township is not going to be on the hook.
Correct.
Taxpayer money will not be used.
So, I mean, the obvious question is, why didn't we do the same with the remaining 43 units?
I got it. So that because this settlement agreement is with Fair Share Housing Center, and they have, as I explained before, these 100% affordable housing projects are being used. So the Fair Share has entered into settlement agreements with approximately 250 municipalities at this point in time, and a lot of those towns have similar programs, and the tax credit program is limited. So the court and Fair Share has not allowed towns to rely upon 100% affordable housing projects solely to meet your obligation, because they want to spread it around the state.
So it's kind of max, we got kind of a max.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
So why can't we use our own structure, tax structure, to implement exactly the same thing? It's much cheaper, everything is much better.
It's actually not. but
Yes, Jen, you cover that, please.
It's really, it's not cheaper, because number one, you have to take into consideration these other two, so we're talking about two other projects which require land acquisition by the developer that the township is not participating in whatsoever. Not to mention construction costs, but then management. So it is a long-term commitment from these developers, especially with these affordable units that have a 30-year deed restriction on them. Financially, communities that have tried to get into the housing market have not been successful. And at the same time, again, we have to get this agreement approved not only by Fair Share Housing Center, who would never go for that, but the court has to approve it as well. Not to mention, there are a number of individuals, if you look up there and you see now that there are less projects, those individuals that are not included, not to mention the interveners that were not included at the outright, are going to challenge every single thing we do, and we have to make sure that it's defensible, constructible, and a realistic project. And to have the township commit those funds, it would be to the tune of millions and millions of dollars that the township really just can't commit to.
And but see, that's really what happens in some of your inner cities, and you end up with a housing authority.
Yes.
And this might come as a surprise, but all of us here don't agree all the time. But we really agree that government should not be involved in the housing here, especially on a local level. And we shouldn't be, basically governing this and inspecting this and going through and maintaining this. It would be a disaster.
Yeah, just to be clear, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying, up front, you can give the developer the money so that it becomes at market, and then he manages it. It's not us, right? It's a very different proposition, but it's a creative proposition. And my biggest frustration here is that there's been a total lack of transparency, and we are given at the 11th hour something to agree to, right? And thank you very much for letting us talk, but this is absolutely not the way we should be running a very, very, very important aspect of this town. There should be open disclosure, and now we learn that the gentleman who's not sitting here had an interest, and it is absolutely, and you all were all aware of it. had to be aware of it. And repeatedly, for many, many meetings, I have come here for 2 years asking for disclosure and for inclusion. And now at the 11th hour, we are told this is it, right? It's really not worthy of these seats.
Oh, yes, it is.
No, it isn't. One sec. You sent me an
Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment.
You asked me to meet with me. I sent you 2 emails.
Thank you for your
I
comment.
disagree with your plan, the way you want to do it. Look, we were forced under litigation rules on what we had to do. This is where we are now because we had to litigate. It's not us, it's the government. That's the way it is. I can't make rules for the government.
If
I
you're
don't
going to
like
respond, I need to
it. I get to
respond.
talk. I don't like it. And the comment about the one
Next.
person. No, I don't, I'm not attacking you. And the comment about the one person, I have to say, the one person here who reclused himself. I don't know this person. He says he has nothing to do with this site. He had many lawyers tell us that he had nothing to do and he did not have to recluse himself by these lawyers. I'm not taking his side. What I'm saying is, if anybody makes money off this deal or has influence for their own benefit, they should go to jail. That's Mr. Critelli, that's Mr. You, that's Mr. Anyone. Can I be more blunt? That's the way life is. I'm not a cop. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm a township committeeman, and I have to make my decision on what's best for the town, the best deal that each site gives to me, not because of some mysterious political purpose. To be a politician, I could say, well, yeah, this is not a good site. I have to do what developer gives us the best deal on his site for the town. And I'm sorry, 2 for 1 is a pretty good deal on that site. And that's the way I have to make my decision. I'm not corrupt, I'm honest, and it's disgusting that we're not worthy. We're worthy. Each one of us here are up at night. We lose sleep over this. You don't think we care about this town that we live in and my family lives in? No, you had your 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's a 3-minute rule. We don't have a chance to talk. He talks for 5 minutes, I got 2 minutes.
That's the way, run for the township.
All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else would like to come up? Ralph is right in the front, come on up.
Can we lower the heating here? It's like,
It was freezing 5 minutes ago. We were having nobody else either. Wait, nobody touched it.
It's a trick.
I didn't touch it.
Trying to get you to please.
We'll take care of the heat.
Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. We all, the public, have been asking for months, years, to be able to hear about what the plans are and to be able to provide input. So I want to thank you for the presentations we've had so far this evening and for this opportunity to speak. General question, what is the process with this litigation going forward? What additional opportunity might the public have to comment, and how is this going to play out?
I can
Andy?
Yeah, I can address that. So, if the committee approves this amended settlement agreement tonight, this matter will go back before the court for a fairness hearing. That will be noticed and advertised, and any person, the court, according to the notice, any person, including yourself or anyone who's interested, will be able to submit written positions on the settlement and then provide, this is going to be subject to what the judge decides, but if you provided written submissions, the court quite often also allows oral presentations. So the next stage in the process will be a fairness hearing before a judge, and in consideration, through that process, the court master, Michael Boland, will be making recommendations to the court concerning his view of the settlement as well.
When might that be?
That will be in the court. It's not scheduled yet, but it will probably be the end of February.
So will be some process for notifying the public of when that is?
Well, yes, and Donna, you could notify.
yeah, we'll do regular notification
we'll put it everywhere in the website, and it'll be in the newsletter. Once we get the date, it will be.
Yeah, okay, I've had 20 seconds, just all the rest of it's been you folks.
So what,
If I can make a suggestion, Deputy Mayor, let them ask their questions in 3 minutes, then they can sit down, then we can answer them, so everyone gets their fair chance. How about
Okay,
that?
absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah,
So you talk, we'll answer your questions after you're done.
Okay. Brief question also, with this, what was posted on the website was that this is a settlement agreement with the Fair Housing Organization. My understanding is there were interveners as well. Is this a settlement with them as well, or how is
No.
that playing
All right,
out?
we'll answer that.
Okay,
Any more
keep going,
questions?
And lastly, with regard to the Palmer Avenue site, what Jen described was, with regard to permitting, was progress in that regard. However, one should also be aware that there was a prior application for that site of about, I believe, 60 units. And it was turned down because basically it was 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. And that the assessment, I don't remember if that was the planning board or the zoning board, but that site, taking into account the environmental restrictions, just could not support that many units. Maybe 40. I'm not going to be specific in whether it's 45 or 50, but definitely not 60.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, so to address Mr. Blumenthal's questions in terms of the interveners, this settlement is with Fair Share Housing Center. The Supreme Court has designated Fair Share as an interested party in every municipality's case before the court. They are in essence they're looking out for low and moderate income households throughout New Jersey. So the settlement is with Fair Share. In terms of interveners, as I pointed out before, anyone who has an objection to our plan, including the sites that were not selected, could file objections with the court and could be heard through that process. But there is not an agreement with those interveners, just because of the way the Supreme Court set it up. It's with Fair Share Housing Center. And Jen could address Palmer Avenue.
I was there when that application came forward. What I will say is that they have obtained a little additional property, and the project is a little different. So they are actually going to park under the building, which is before they were not, which has enabled them to get the units. They're not in the water now. No, going to create submarines now. No, we've taken a look at it. They're going to park below the building, so they are. There was an issue the last go around with the availability of parking, which was a significant concern. I know the flooding was a concern, but the availability of parking. This project is RSI's compliant with parking, which is a big departure from the last go around where it was like just over 1 spot per unit. Now we have in excess of 2 spots per unit. But again, just to kind of further, to go back to your other question, which I don't know that was 100% addressed, is that yes, there'll be a fairness hearing, but there is also going to be a housing element and fair share plan before the planning board that's going to have a public component, and then zoning for these sites are also going to take place, which is going to have a public component, and then there's going to be a planning board process, at which time, which is the same issue that occurred the last time when this application went before the planning board, issues arose, technical issues came out during the course of the hearing, so there is going to be that component as well. So this is not the fait accompli.
It's a long way off.
Yes, and this is probably something that's going to take place over the next several years. It's not going to be done instantaneously. So there's going to be multiple opportunities for the public to participate in the process beyond this.
Just brief follow-up with regard to Palmer and one thing that you said. The prior application, was that just on the old Palmer office building lot and not the adjacent lot?
Yes.
You know what?
Yes.
I think
Okay.
so. I
Okay.
think
So
so.
this is
I'm not
added
100% sure, but
But
I
this
think.
has added that additional lot.
Correct,
which
there's
adds
additional
about
property. A couple
Another
acres.
acre of
Yes.
dry land.
Correct. So there are some differences between what was done previously and what was done now.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to comment, to ask questions, and look forward to a further continuing open process. Thank you.
Amy, a question maybe you can help with the public.
Sure.
Traditionally,
Yes.
when we have our plan, a lot of the interveners usually go away, or there's no, they're still there, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, in many towns that I represent, interveners, if they choose to spend more money in terms of further into their project, they file objections. So it really varies.
Does our plan help us in those litigations? if we have a
Yeah, well,
plan?
yeah, because you have a solid approvable plan, and again, it's not a lawsuit, it's not a new lawsuit. They've intervened, the Supreme Court made the township go to court to get approval of a plan, and the process allows for developers or property owners to intervene, so they could file papers and make arguments as to why they think Site A is better than Site B, but at the end of the day, it's really because the township is voluntarily complying, it's the township's decision on how to meet the obligation. And just because another site may also